The American Planning Association regularly identifies the city of San Diego as one of the truly great planned communities in the United States. Its planning policies addressing environmental management, historic preservation, the creation of walkable neighborhoods, and urban design have allowed it to earn the title America's Finest City. However, planning didn't begin 35 years ago. It began at the turn of the century when city fathers, determined to identify a vision, hired that planning pioneer, John Nolen. San Diego today boasts neighborhoods such as Little Italy, a walkable community with unique cultural association to the early Italian immigrants who worked in San Diego's fishing industry. The Gaslamp District, which represents turn-of-the-century San Diego and serves as a major entertainment zone for the community. Horton Plaza, one of the first modern inner-city shopping malls. Hillcrest, another mixed-use neighborhood dating back to the 1920s that was recently recognized by the American Planning Association for its urban design and community diversity. Balboa Park, one of the truly great central city parks in the country. Extensive bay and beachfront parks, and an environmental management program that is focused on preserving San Diego's unique topography, canyons, river valleys, and a special focus on the preservation of endangered habitats within an urban core. All of these existing planned elements of the city can be directly traced to the original vision that John Nolen described in his 1908 San Diego Comprehensive Plan for its improvement. But to understand the importance of that plan, it's key to first see San Diego as he first saw it in 1907. San Diego was one of those land boom communities of the late 1800s in California, rising to a population of over 80,000 people by the 1880s. However, by 1900, that population had shrunk to 17,700, a classic example of the failure of the land boom. The focus of local power brokers and civic leaders such as John D. Spreckels and George Marston was to define city growth in a systematic form that served their varied interests and find a way to get away from that bust mentality of the 1880s.
After 1900, several entrepreneurs came forward to determine the fate, you might say, or the future of San Diego. And they were quite different in personalities. George Marston was the more philanthropic type, and although he was wealthy, he would not have been in the same category as, for example, Scripps and Spreckels. In fact, Marston is known for almost giving away his entire fortune.
He was the head of San Diego's #1 department store, the Marston store, and about that time, around 1900, he retired from activity in his company and became, you might call it, a full-time philanthropist and a civic leader. He'd come here in 1870, he was only 20 years old, and by the time he was in his 50s, he was ready to really take on San Diego as a kind of a big project and do great things for it. So he devoted all his free time to civic causes from about 1900 on. Well, he was involved in the first big project he wanted to do was Balboa Park. At the time, it was called City Park, and had almost no planning, no improvements at all after 30 years of in existence. So he saw to it that the Chamber of Commerce started a committee to improve the park, and they hired Samuel Parsons from New York to come and do a master plan for Balboa Park, which was finished in 1904. Then he turned to the city itself, and maybe he thought we can go from a park plan to a city plan. And out of that came the idea of hiring a city planner to help guide San Diego into his future. He called on the American Civic Association in Washington, D.C. and said, "Who do you recommend we hire?" And they had several suggestions, and one of them was a man named John Nolen from Cambridge, Massachusetts.
San Diego is indeed unique. Even in Southern California, its situation, climate, and scenery make it stand out in permanent attractiveness beyond all communities. Its resources as a city are in many respects unmatched. The bay on which it directly fronts is one of the safest and most beautiful harbors in the world, a landlocked body of water more than a score of miles in area with a large channel deep enough to take the largest ships. Not only have the bay, but every type of scenery, beach, promontory, mesa, and canyon, united in never-ending variety to form a city that is strikingly individual in character and great beauty. Notwithstanding its advantages of situation, climate, and scenery, San Diego is today neither interesting nor beautiful. Its city is not thoughtful, but on the contrary, ignorant and wasteful. It has no wide and impressive business streets, practically no open spaces in the heart of the city, no worthy sculpture. Aside from a big undeveloped city park, it has neither pleasure grounds, parkways, nor boulevards, no large well-planned playgrounds. It has no public buildings, excellent in design or location. It has done little or nothing to secure for its people the benefits of its great resources, nor provide those concomitants without which natural resources are so often valuable.
The City Beautiful movement of planning occurred during the Progressive Era in the late 1800s, early 1900s. It was a reaction to the industrialization of cities, the blight, the smoke, the immigrant classes coming in, and the feeling that the cities were really just had gone to hell in a handbasket, and something had to be done. And so the progressive movement really was dealing with social policy, child labor laws, industrialization, the large conglomerates of industry, and the exploitation of people. And out of that came an idea that we had to make our cities better, that they had to be beautiful, that places where people wanted to be, we had to clean up the soot that came out of the smokestacks. We had to give people homes. We had to give them parks, because parks were considered the lungs of the city and it made people healthier. We had to provide civic enterprises and civic uses that made people proud about where their city was and who they were and what they were part of. And all this gave rise into the planning movement. And people like Daniel Burnham in Chicago, starting with the 1893 World's Fair, which commemorated the Columbus discovering America, developed what was called the White City. And people came there and said, if this is what the fair could be, why can't our cities be like this? And Burnham went on to plan major cities around the world, Manila and San Francisco, as well as the famous Chicago plan in 1909. There were others who came out of that movement that also were planners. And there was people like Frederick Law Olmsted who worked with Burnham on the plan, and his two sons that became city planners, and people like John Nolen. John Nolen was a landscape architect who late in life actually entered the profession and became a planner. And while Burnham did large cities, Nolen focused on small cities and new communities. And one of his first contracts was to come to San Diego and do a plan for the city of San Diego.
This new approach to city planning was a comprehensive approach for future growth. Noted urban historian William H. Wilson identified the key ideological components as transforming cities into beautiful entities, utilizing architecture to preserve past physical accomplishments in the cities, preserving the natural environment, planning for utility, function, and efficiency in designs to aid property values, utilizing plans to solve social problems, providing for individual mobility, mirroring the success of European cities. Wilson identifies two other key elements of the early City Beautiful plans. First, the inclusion of design elements of civic centers as central point of identity tied to a formal landscape boulevard system with a master park plan, and second, the involvement of local civic organizations, including the middle and upper middle classes from the city. Between 1905 and 1909, 38 cities in the United States retained professionals to prepare these early city master plans or reports for civic improvement. Among those early plans, only one included comprehensive in its title to illustrate the extent of its vision. That plan was San Diego's.